This podcast is recorded on Aboriginal land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome back to the Radical Online Leftist Pipeline podcast. My name is Mitch Alexander.
My name is Tom Tanaki.
I'm Celeste Little.
And listen to us being fully professional as we have an amazing guest on for this week. It's Kath Larkin from the Victorian Socialists running in the seat of Cooper in the lower house at this federal election. To just let all the listeners know, we are pivoting to full centrist election coverage now as a show. Straight down the line. Both sides will be having Liberal Party people on soon, making sure we've got fair and balanced
Yeah.
It's a little late to let you know this, but we're actually going to hijack this podcast. We're bringing in Libertarian Party and One Nation candidates for an impromptu debate.
Because they don't get enough airtime.
It's just ambushing Kath.
Thanks for having me on, comrades. It looks like this is going to be fun.
Yeah, welcome to the very serious vibe of the podcast. No, thank you heaps for coming on. Me personally, I've spoken about this before. I love the idea of contributing, I guess, to this broad left-wing, left of center movement. I think it's very fucking needed right now. And I dare say Vic Socialists are further away from the center than the left wing. It's quite nice to have a fucking full lefty on. So yeah. I had a question that I was sort of interested in that I thought might frame the work Vic Socialists are doing, that you're wanting to do in the seat, all that sort of stuff. But this question that I had was, let's pretend other communist parties don't exist, right? But for you in particular and the party, what is the difference between communism and socialism? And why is it the Victorian Socialists as opposed to the Victorian Communists or even the Victorian Social Democrats or something? What is it about socialism in particular that you want to be bringing to Australian federal elections?
Yeah, cool. I mean, look, to me, I pretty much use the term communist and socialist interchangeably. Kind of, if you go back, the idea is that socialism is sort of the process of getting to a full communist society, a society that is run democratically by the working class. I guess socialism has, become the word that, people feel comfortable with. It's pretty broad. Victorian Socialists is a relatively broad church. I'm a revolutionary socialist, but, and there's plenty of, other revolutionaries within Victorian Socialists. It's also, an outfit that can, have within it people with a whole bunch of different views. But I guess what we're all committed to is trying to build a socialist current in this country, a current that, can put up a genuine working class alternative to the neoliberal bullshit we see from both, major parties.
I mean, that's something that, Celeste, you've talked a lot about too, of just sort of making sure there are options and no safe seats and there are alternatives.
Yeah. And, it's so good to see you again, Kath, because Kath and I were both candidates at the last election. And I think that I have spoken a fair bit with regards to, I haven't. Let me try again. I've spoken as to why it was that I ran in the first place and why I was also one and done. And it's because, this is one of the most left-wing seats in the country as far as the vote goes, left-wing electoralism. But it's also one of the least democratic seats in the country. It had been held by the Labor Party for generation after generation. It used to be safe to the tune of, I think, 32% at its high point.
It's not democratic. It's fine.
That is not remotely democratic. And so the challenge in Cooper happens on the left. And the more that we can actually fuel that challenge by having, quality candidates, quality parties, offering an alternative to what we're being told by the system is the left, which so is not the left, the better it gets. So, yeah, it was just so cool to be, given my own personal politics, but also where I decided to put my challenge to have impact and that. It's just so cool to have you in the room.
I've got a question for both of you and, yourself, Celeste, and you, Kath, because I grew up out in the sort of outer western suburbs or places like Melton. And I grew up around Melton specifically, trying to avoid it because I don't like Melton. So I grew up around Melton. No, I grew up in fucking Melton.
Yeah,
What a shame. A crushing shame of being a Meltonian. And the problem with like that was that these are dyed-in-the-wool Labor seats, well, certainly were when I was growing up, and consequently was abandoned. You know, you just wouldn't get any infrastructure upgrades as a consequence of like always knowing that, you know, Labor always knowing that they'd have your vote meant that they would do nothing for you. And so, you know, I always wished would be more of a swing seat in that sense. I wondered if it was the same thing. Has it been the same thing for Cooper because it's closer to the city, larger population? Have you always found that to be similar? If it's always been Labor?
Yeah, God, yeah. Just from my perspective, you know, the only reason why the seat, after some pretty toxic white men occupied the seat for a good period of time, the only reason why they pivoted towards a more sensible choice for the community at large in Jed Carney when it came to the Labor Party was because there was a challenge on the left that was mounting, and they had to try and find something a little bit more palatable to the electorate.
Like, if people don't know, some of the history of that seat, like when I was growing up, was Martin Ferguson, who was a vile, like, right-winger from the Labor Party. I remember quite vividly him like opposing IVF access because it's only for hairy-legged lesbians, like just an out and out open.
That's what he said.
Yeah, he came and spoke at my to my Year 12 politics class and basically got chased out.
Did
he couldn't take the heat from a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds asking pretty basic questions. Then we had David Feeney, corrupt, lied about his portfolio. Yeah. And so then they airlift kind of Jed in from over in Brunswick. And, like, I think she's been good at appearing left-wing, but actually isn't any more left-wing than the rest of the party. At the end of the day, she toes the party line. She votes along party lines, you know, wants to be seen as a hero of refugees, but votes for vote turnbacks, wants to be seen as an environmentalist, but, you know, has shares in a mining company. Like, she's really there to basically, like, help the Labor Party continue to screw over the working class and the rest of us.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it, Kath? Because they haven't then recalibrated where they've put her in as a person to hold the seat, and then, you know, had a bit of a challenge at the last election. They haven't actually then gone, how do we appeal to this electorate which is very left? They've just gone down that same middle. You know, if they find something too objectionable, they just simply don't turn up to the vote. Like, the party room dynamics have been reinforced. There's nothing that has changed by having her in there except an appearance. Yeah.
Well, because I feel like, you know, the system that we have is one in which we're supposed to, as a community, come together and get someone to Canberra who represents us. And the trick that the Labor Party constantly do, you just mentioned, Celeste, is that the progressives will just not show up to votes that are contentious where the votes aren't needed. And so on their voting record, it's like, oh, there's a couple of abstentions. Don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm still progressive. Or if the numbers are there, they will toe the party line and vote. So at this point, to me, if I want a progressive in there, even if it's someone, because I've talked to Jed a couple times about, like, Joel, Fitzgibbon, I think, was the mining guy in the Labor Party who was always like dragging them left. And she was like, oh, I'm working in the background to work on stuff and I can build some pretty good coalitions in the background. So just wait for the votes. And she'd never get the votes and it would never go through. And I was like, well, fuck, at this point, why not have someone who's not in government who will vote the way I need to? Because your vote's just as fucking useless. And we need someone in there willing to vote on left things. So on that, Kath, what are the few, like, positions, policies, or, like, key votes that you and the Victorian Socialists are focused on that differentiate you from the other left parties that, you know, someone in Cooper, someone in Melbourne could vote for?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, like, one of our big things is around housing. You know, like, we need to put in those red caps. We need to bring down the price of rentals. We need, you know, a public builder that can build 1 million public homes. But also things like we want to take those empty hands those empty homes off the rich. Like, it's disgusting that we exist in a system that allows people to hoard property while there are homeless people. Like, that's got to end. So homes that are left vacant for 12 months, we want to take them back and allocate them to people on the public housing list. You know, I think that the thing that really differentiates us from the others is that we're anti-capitalist, and that means we're not looking to compromise with the Labor Party. I think it has been an unfortunate element of the Greens kind of federal campaign. There's been a lot more sucking up to Labor this time. You know, it's all about opposing Dutton. You know, really disappointing to see them, you know, wanting to fund fucking missiles and a defense policy. Like, you know, I think that is because all of the other parties at the end of the day are seeking to run capitalism. Victorian Socialists is not. So it means, we're going to threaten the profits of the supermarkets. We're going to, you know, force price caps there too. Like, there's no reason that they should be allowed to profit off hunger and misery. You know, and we're going to, you know, take up the fight around Palestine, around refugees. I think that's really important. And for us, it's about not just trying to get someone into Parliament, but build a grassroots movement that can actually, you know, really put that pressure on.
Yeah, continue beyond that. Kath, can I ask, so much work has been done. Well, housing is a bigger question, even that it was already a question on everyone's list during the last federal election, which you were around for. You were contesting in Cooper. Yeah. So you've got experience with these two campaigns, but it's snowballed. And it hasn't just snowballed because it's more of an issue for people, although it is. The rental crisis is worse and so on and so forth. But there's also been, you know, Jordan's work has amassed a greater following for people who are concerned about housing and want to actually do something about it. Have you recognised that it's a more powerful selling point, for whatever better word, more powerful pitch, and that you're getting more people's attention when you talk about housing now as opposed to last time?
Yeah, I mean, look, when Victorian Socialists formed in, you know, 2018, 2019, the housing policy was from the beginning one of our biggest pieces. You know, a lot of us were involved in public housing activism in particular. It was really positive to see the Greens policy sort of shift left on that question after VS put that policy. So it's been really core to what we do the whole way through. But it's certainly the case that more and more people are talking about it. It's connecting with more and more. Like, just walking down High Street, you know, I was putting up posters for a forum that Jordan was doing. I got stopped by 5 people in Preston who are experiencing homelessness. Like, that's new. I haven't experienced that in previous years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And there's been a couple of organisations that used to do outreach to homeless that have also shut down in the area, you know, due to lack of funding. Like, it's actually incredibly bad. Yeah.
Have they, Celeste, is that because they've experienced funding cuts since last time round? Or?
Well, you know, when you've got like a lot of these sort of housing solutions that the governments do support are NGOs, and they're reliant on funding round after funding round. So they have to continually apply for pools of money from state, federal, you know, wherever else, philanthropy, wherever else. If they're knocked back, all of a sudden they just have to scatter an entire program. So a group of people just end up being disenfranchised or further out of ever being able to have a safe roof over their head or a good meal or, you know, something like that.
But that can have a domino effect on the other organisations because, of course, again, there's a greater need on the organisations that remain. They therefore need more funding, but it ain't like there's any new funding coming through. So, there's also just the issue of the parallels with the ABC, where, you know, you can take a funding cut in real term by not having your funding increased. And so when we have these issues with unhoused people also not having mental health services, also not having access to health and food and everything like that, that then makes their physical and mental health degrade, they have worse outcomes with housing. So these, even if they had the same funding year on year, with just the combination of inflation and more people that need help, that's a funding cut. And that's how they can continue to fall behind. Then they fall behind too much, and Labor and Liberal go, well, the services aren't working. We've got to make some tough cuts and we've got to get some efficiencies, which is, again, and that's why I love what you said, Kath, about not going for the capitalist or the neoliberal mindset. That's neoliberalism.
That's the mindset that continues to make this worse, because apparently we can find efficiencies, and if the GDP goes up, we're good. So, and I guess another follow-up question for you then. You're talking very specifically about, we're not going in with a capitalist mindset. That's a different thing that we want to be doing. And that will run you into problems with like the politicians and the policies that are there for sure. But there is also the problem that it will run you into problems with segments of the population and the media, because they are going to attack you on that. There is a broad consensus that small business owners are there because of capitalism, and that's really good, and all that sort of stuff, right? So I'm just wondering, in a really broad sense, because you also talked about building movements outside of Parliament, which we love. That's a big thing for me as well. Power comes from outside of Parliament. A lot of the time, politicians follow. But you're going to have huge problems with the media going harder and harder the more sort of power you get, trying to stymie that movement as it builds up. So I'm wondering if you've thought about, if you've got broad sort of, concerns or plans or whatever it is to counter the narrative that might come out of just saying, like, firstly, you're not serious, then you're dangerous, then you're, naive to politics and whatnot. How will you, or how are you thinking about navigating that idea and building the consensus, given that you are in politics and politics is about getting as many votes as you can? You're you're choosing to play this dog shit game when you get into politics. So where's the actions taking place in that tension between trying to get as many votes as you can to actually get power, but then getting fucked by everyone who's going, no, don't vote for them, they're evil or terrible or stupid or whatever it might be?
Yeah, well, I guess in terms of like media narrative, media onslaught attacking us, bring it on. We want it. That is way better than not being talked about. There's been for years, we were sending press releases. We were trying to show them, yeah, we're outrageous. We're going to take your houses. Like in the council election, I spoke to the fucking Melbourne Property Council, and they were literally clutching their pearls as I talked about what we wanted to do. We want that because actually ordinary people can see through that bullshit. Like one of the things we know is that people are actually, a lot of people, like we're in a country of kind of swinging voters, of people who vote pretty softly because they haven't seen an alternative. And what we're finding is when we can talk to people, we swing a lot of votes, which is why the major parties are trying to bring in more limitations of our democracy at the voting booths. They don't want us doing that. They hate it when they see VS talking to people, because when people hear, an actual genuine working class alternative, we're finding we get really good results. Like when you think about, how new we are, that in the Werribee by-election, everyone was saying this, it's going to go Liberal. But actually we got like over 7% of the vote, pretty close to equal with the Greens, who've been around for a lot longer. Yeah. And actually it meant that like, not that this was either ours or the Greens' plan, but it actually did keep the Liberals out. Because, we were able to get a bigger swing than the Liberal Party. So I think that people can be won, on these questions, things like a state bank to provide affordable home loans, making all childcare free and publicly available, putting it into the public system. Like all of these things are bread and butter concerns, and we can connect them with the questions of social justice. So I think, the idea that it's radical, I think most people are finding, it's actually common sense. Like,
yeah, it's not just common sense, but if I was to be honest, like if I think about my grandfather and grandmother's generation, like they were rusted on Labor. That's exactly what they would have voted for in those times. Like it's just revisiting some very core ideas of social cohesion from that perspective.
It's very much like what people might have thought of as traditional Labor values. Like really, like
funny guy.
And also, like, there's nothing wrong with being a militant minority. Is the other thing?
Yeah, no,
like that movement that we want to build has to start somewhere.
Yeah, you only need 50% plus one of the vote. You don't need the broad church approach to get everyone from the furthest right-wing racist across to the, dyed-in-the-wool communist. And the other thing is that in our system as well, you only need like a core group of people. You need the base, as it's called, to be there with you, which is one of the problems I've seen a couple of times now over the decades with the Greens, getting a whiff of minority government and going, we're respectable, we're centrist. And it's like, don't give up the base. What are you doing? Because what we've seen now as well, which is, we've talked a bit about this with Labor, but this is what Vic Socialists also offer, is that it's like the Greens pull Labor to the left. When there's a threat in the seat and when it's a threat like federally, they pull them across. Vic Socialists do that to the Greens and it's only good. If the Greens are the only left party in a seat, that's not that good. It's really cool to see Vic Socialists pull them on certain policies and just let them know that there's an appetite to go harder left. Because ultimately, I want people in every seat that vote left. Great. How do we get there? I don't need my team to be there. I don't need it like a fucking football final, right? I want good policies to come out. And if we have these pressures, especially with our preferential voting system, great. Fucking get in there and push people left. It can work.
Yeah, that preferential voting thing is a real thing that I talk to voters about. Labor voters in particular get sold this lie that like if you vote for anyone else, you're handing the country over to the Liberals. Yeah. Plenty of union officials hammer their members with that lie. But actually, like that's just not the case. The full value of your vote will keep, transferring down the ballot line as people get knocked out. So, in Cooper, the two-party preferred are between Greens and Labor. Like, so, which one of them you put like ahead of the other will kind of determine the thing about who actually wins the seat. But you can send both of those parties a message that they need to do better, on Palestine, on the environment, on housing, on all of these things that matter to people by voting one Victorian Socialist. And then your vote will then flow because as you said, at the moment we're very much a minority, but let's give them a bit of a kicking and point them in the right direction.
I just wanted to go back quickly. You were saying as well, like you're holding a lot of old school Labor values, basically. And there's been something that I've seen a little bit. So I'm a sicko and I love these books, right? So like I'm holding up the book Malcolm Fraser, The Political Memoirs. It's fucked. I've got John Howard's book that he wrote in lockdown. I've got Kevin Rudd's book. I'm sicko. But it's just been interesting looking at this sort of like the difference between ideology and material conditions. And we know like Menzies had the housing program. Like the Liberal government was like, people should have houses, guys. People will turn into conservatives if we give them security. So let's be a bit socialist and give everyone housing, blah, blah, blah. Looking at the Malcolm Fraser one, Liberal politician, the book offers insights into Malcolm Fraser's substantial achievements. He was the first Australian politician to describe Australia's future as multicultural, and his federal government was the first to pass Aboriginal land rights and freedom of information legislation, also establishing the Human Rights Commission, something that the Liberal Party, like people like Tim Wilson, want to undermine. Yeah. After his parliamentary career, Fraser continued to be an important player in public life, playing a key role in persuading the US Congress to impose sanctions on South Africa as part of the battle against apartheid. What happened? Like this switch that sort of happens where now that is all looking like extreme left. Like imagine if John Howard, ex-Prime Minister, helped lobby the US Congress to impose sanctions on Israel. Like, it's absurd. It would never fucking happen. So it's just interesting that the material conditions don't tend to change. And it's the culture war bullshit and the political positioning that changes. And right now we're in a moment where it's down to this militant minority group of leftists to go, can we have the bare fucking minimum, please and thank you? So yeah.
Like I reckon there's a bunch of stuff in terms of material conditions about like why could a Liberal government support welfare at times? Partly because it's also about reproducing the working class so that you can exploit them. So there are moments when capitalist politicians can support social democracy as a way of actually benefiting the system overall. And just on apartheid South Africa, it's worth mentioning, of course, the incredible revolutionary actions of black people in South Africa, but also the unions and workers. The Liberals might say that they imposed sanctions, but actually first the unions did. It was wharfies, it was a whole series of other workers who refused to move that product, who protested, who fought, who galvanised public opinion and played a significant role in pushing the government into that. So, which again is also just a reminder, social movements can have a real impact.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because you were like militant union, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you were instrumental in the railway strikes in Melbourne and Wagga. Do you want to talk about like your history and experience with unions, and I guess how is that informing your take on political campaigning and what you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, so I come from sort of a rank and file union background. My grandfather was involved in the Clary O'Shea general strikes. My mum was involved in the kind of the rank and file movement in the nurses union in the 80s that pushed towards the 86 general strike. And then I've just been a unionist since I got into the workforce, whether that was organising in hospitality when I was very young, and then I spent about a decade in the railways. Was the first woman to get elected as a delegate at Flinders Street Station, which was a real
That's
working
incredible,
through
yeah.
like sexism and
Wow.
some of those barriers, and like connecting them with, hey guys, like actually we all go forward together or we all go backwards together. But that strike in 2015 was really impressive and involved a lot of rank and file organising. So we had a whole series of different rank and file committees that would meet, that would, kind of strategize together, that would then go into the delegates meetings and the formal meetings held by the union officials and, push on things and push in a more left-wing direction. Like when we first did a ballot for industrial action, because that's a process you have to go through to legally be allowed to strike in this country, a lot of the union officials were going around saying, we won't actually have to strike. We just want to like give them a threat. We want to give them a scare. Whereas me and other rank and file militants were going and visiting stations and saying, and like preparing people for the fact that indeed we would need to strike.
Yeah.
But like the point of voting on this was to get ready to take action, which was actually incredibly popular because Mets were a dog company that people were keen for a fight. And so, like going on strike, basically the best day of my fucking life. Like, on the concourse at Flinders Street Station as we were about to walk off, there were these like manager losers from head office who'd come down with their clipboards. They were like desperately asking us questions. We were like, see ya, and like walked out and, like really, gave the company a scare. And as a result, we were actually able to improve, the offer. I would have liked to go out again. There are a bunch of people who would have liked to go out again, but our movement just wasn't strong enough to withstand, I guess, the limitations that the union officials themselves, placed on us. So, it was a wonderful experience. We need more of it. And we've just got to keep building, I guess, that left-wing militant current within our trade unions.
Oh, yeah, and definitely posing a challenge to all of these little rules and regulations that now sit around the right to take collective action as workers, like, acceptable strike action. What sort of weird world are we in where that has become a thing? And I say that as a long-term unionist, And
a bunch of the restrictions were not just like put in by the Liberals and maintained by Labor, but a bunch of them actually come from Labor, come from the Rudd and Gillard government.
We've talked about that too with like the Accords came in under Labor. It was Thatcher, Reagan and Hawke. Come on, guy. Like Labor fucking sold us out. Anyway, sorry, Tom.
I was going to ask, are you finding it harder to get to people in real life? Like, I mean, because I know that might be silly. I mean, you could just door knock as well as you could ever do before. But I have this nascent sense that everyone is more and more terminally offline. Like, I mean, like if we had a good 10, 20 years of like neoliberalism and anti-union effort in a bipartisan sense, like derailing a lot of, union powers and that kind of thing in the 90s and the 2000s. Since then, we've had 10 years or more of like social media working hand in hand with the far right around the world. And that's made people, and also the atomizing effect of everyone just being terminally fucking online has made people, people are just out less, that is my nascent sense anyway. So I have been wondering if parties like yourselves are the parties of going to people, and you have that, as you've just talked about, you have that background of doing it anyway. You get out and you get on your feet and you do things. Are you finding you said before you're finding people are easier like when you can get to people in real life, they're easy to sway. They listen,
Mm.
You're probably the only time that anyone's fucking talked to anyone in the past year when you realise, but are you finding it harder to reach people, or are you just finding people are more eager to be talked to IRL?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much the kind of boots on the ground, talk to people in real life. We do have a bunch of wonderful volunteers and activists who do the online stuff. I mean, Jordan still seems to reach like incredible numbers of people, but like it's definitely true that like all the stuff about the algorithms and shit online, it's not that straightforward as it once was, just getting your message out that way. The other thing basically is just like how fucking shit politics is. Like I think Mitch, you referred to it as a bit of a dog's game. Like one of the reasons that it's difficult to have those initial conversations sometimes is people are like, not another fucking politician.
Yeah.
And so you've got to find a way to break through that. I think, it's often portrayed as apathy. I don't think it's apathy. I think people know that things are shit and they would like it if they were better. But people have kind of lost that sense of hope that it's possible, and they're used to like more and more politicians who all say they're going to do something different but actually do the same. So like finding ways to kind of break through that is I guess that's the challenge for us.
So it's something I've been sort of thinking about. We've talked about it a little bit, and so I'd love to get your perspective, Kath, as someone in a campaign, literally running for the federal election. But my sense of it at the moment is that this is one of the genuinely like limpest, low energy, unenthusiastic election that I've seen in a long time. Like Dutton has recently come out and just gone, he said, we're going to cut 41,000 jobs and we're going to get everyone back in the office. And I ardently believe that. And then after a week of bad press, he's like, I don't believe that. We're not doing that, actually. Really sorry. We got it wrong. I'm not going to do that. And Albanese's just gone, that's pretty bad that he did that. You should vote for us. And also, we've got some money for health. And Dutton's gone, we'll do nuclear or something. And it feels like every fucking politician at the high level is just like, what do you want? I don't want minority government, but I don't want to do anything real. Come on. And so I think that sort of speaks to that vibe that you're getting from people, that they're not apathetic, but they feel the apathy from our ruling class as it is. They feel it from our fucking politicians at the moment. So it seems like Victorian Socialists are filling a bunch of different niches, and one of them is, do you want to care? Would you like to care? Would you like someone to care with you? Let's go fucking care about this and each other together. So in terms of those sort of the in-person things, the boots on the ground things that you're seeing, besides something like door knocking, what is having a galvanizing effect for people that you're seeing, especially around Cooper and stuff where you're campaigning? What is getting people enthusiastic again? What sort of events, not just the policies?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for us, we're trying to deliver a message of hope and resistance in a pretty bleak landscape. And I think, a part of why it's such this like, limp election, or like the Liberals seem totally fucking hapless, is because it's very squarely a cost of living election, which is a pretty cringy term. Like it is to say that there's a crisis in people's capacity to afford to live.
Yeah.
And like,
Do you have enough money to be alive?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. I mean, right there kind of sums up what's wrong with capitalism, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I think part of the thing is neither of the major parties can offer anything real on that, and people can see through that.
Yeah.
So I think, and even the politicians know it. Like they're throwing around bullshit things that won't do anything. A task force on grocery prices, like
that's right.
This is all pretty garbage. So I think part of it is they have nothing to offer, which kind of leads to that sort of haplessness. So like what's breaking through? I mean, I guess it's different for different people. Like a lot of it is the ideas, because we're not quite at the size and shape we want to be showing like what the alternative is in practical terms. But I think people are inspired by the continued resistance around Palestine, by the fact that, people will come out in their local areas to, defend, public housing. Like, I think those when people see that, I think one of the biggest things that gave everybody like a bit of a shot in the arm was the Woolworth strike. You know, when all these warehouse workers, like they, not the politicians, they actually challenge Woolies and their their profit making. That's the sort of stuff that shows people like that power of the working class. That's the alternative way forward. And yeah, it was great. Like we had a great time being down on the picket line, standing with those workers, learning from those workers. And there was a bunch of people who kind of came to VS out of that as well, like seeing both the role of the workers and the role that socialists could play in supporting them.
You know, one of the most gorgeous things I saw with that actually was just, you know, scrolling through my socials and seeing a bunch of people just taking photos of this product cannot be filled because we are taking action. And I just sort of thought, oh, this is good. Like people are putting strike action from afar all over their socials at this point. This is inspiring people and bringing a solidarity that is you know, it's rare.
It was such a good flashpoint too, because everyone knew we were getting fucked by these two major shopping centers, like the grocers. They were fucking us on price. Everyone hated them. It was a perfect opportunity. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't have a strong Labor Party presence on those picket lines. They were not there supporting Labor. I also know that I tried to get Greens members there and tried to get them connected to certain influencers. I don't know who that might be, you know, that I might know personally enough to start a project with, to like, you know, just do some fucking work on this, because even cynically, what a fucking amazing point in time to go, yeah, we're aligned with that. Look how cool this is. And it was left to the workers and the socialists basically to let the parties know what should be done. And to have, you know, Vic Socialist involved in that, it's like, yeah, you'd fucking hope so. But you'd also, on paper, really hope that Greens were down there and Labor were down there doing that. That's the whole fucking point of the Labor Party, apparently. It's in their name, for fuck's sake. And yet, we just don't have that anymore. But it was so fucking, invigorating is the word I keep coming back to see workers challenging the supermarkets and showing it's possible. Because what we get, again, from these apathetic parties is like, we can't do much, guys. Capitalism. No. We got to keep the boat right. Guys, we can't risk anything, guys.
Yeah, totally. Kath, are you finding that people are getting more even on the left, you know, are getting more disenfranchised in any? Are you sensing greater disillusionment because, you know, outside of amazing moments like the Woolly strike, you've got this staring defeat and the massive death toll that comes with it of Palestine? Because you know, a lot of my comrades, and I'll speak to myself as well, just, you know, it's affected us all, those of us who have a conscience and eyes to see what's happened. You know, it's been so fucking defeating to see, even if we're not surprised, even if some of us are like lifelong anti-Zionists, it's still been so defeating to watch the machinery of power just completely erase this unforgivable death toll. Are you seeing that among lefties? Like, you know what I mean, on campaign trail? Are you noticing that among our sort of broader base, you know?
Yeah, I think like there's a real trend of that. And I mean, it is harrowing, you know, what's coming out of Gaza and the West Bank, you know, people losing their homes, our government's just supporting down the line, you know, killing children. I mean, the recent like murder and attempted cover-up of aid workers, and the fact that, we have been out on the streets for over a year consistently and it's still going unabated. So, like, yes, people are like feeling pretty down. And there's people who are just glad to see someone pushing back. And there's also people who are going, what's the point? And I think part of that is because the working class movement has been at such an ebb in recent years. You know, hardly anyone's in a union, knows about unions, knows about workers' fight backs. So people haven't seen that alternative power. And I guess that's what socialists bring to this, that actually we know that the working class are the people who have the power to transform society. We don't, like, nothing makes that untrue. Like, nothing has changed in that respect. Workers still do everything that makes society function. We create all of the wealth. So we know that that potential power is there. And I guess the point of what we're doing in Vic Socialists is rebuild that sort of movement that can see that connection, and throw themselves into it. All of us, we're activists 365 days of the year. The elections are a particular flashpoint, but, we're in every movement, at every picket line, every protest, organising spaces. We're there, all the time. And that's just a really different politic, I think, from anyone else. It's why we had hundreds of socialists down at the Woolies picket line, because we were like, this is the thing. Whereas for other forces, maybe they think it's nice, maybe they think it's worthy. There were individual Greens members there, the local Labor members, come and do a quiet meeting with the workers. That sort of happens, but none of these forces are seeing these people as a power to transform.
Trying to both harness it and build it is the bigger thing. They can engage with it at an aesthetic level. They can appear with it, or they can even try to sort of mitigate it and, follow the sensible line. You don't really want to be doing this. You've made your point. Now let's get back to boardrooms and hash out these negotiations in a sensible way, as opposed to, we can change a lot of shit for the better by doing exactly this. And like you said, it's the power of the working class is just dormant at the moment. It's still there, and it's still revolutionary. It is still massively able to transform sectors. And they know that. That's why they try to make sure it stays dormant. That's the big thing. And that's speaking, Tom, again, to the idea of beating people down and the apathy, or a type of, depressive mindset that can seep in. I think we need to keep in mind that that's deliberate. This isn't anytime we feel defeated by things, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it's not an accidental outcome from some of their policies. They deliberately go out of their way and spend literally billions of dollars to make sure we don't think that there's an alternative. Mm-hmm. We've got forces working against us, spending a lot of money and a lot of research and a lot of effort into pushing us all into certain directions. And so the only way to fight back against that is to feel like you were fighting back against it. Like you said, Kath, the day you went on strike was the best day of your life. Yeah. I've been involved in strike actions. I've had a union rep come in and, be there on my behalf during a meeting where I might have been fired. And it's so fucking powerful. It is the best feeling on earth to be arm in arm with comrades and affecting change. That's the project, is making sure people see that happening and feel it happening, which, I guess, if you've got ideas on this as well, again, something we've talked about a couple of times, and you mentioned it as well with the train strike. It's not just the case that if you're in a union, then you're set. Sometimes union leadership also suck. I've been involved in some unions, there was an issue with the Monash NTEU, where the rank and file had to sort of pull up and go, no, you need to negotiate properly on our behalf for something. And they went, oh shit, we do. And they did. And it was fucking great. But there can still be, inside, the Greens or outside the Greens, inside Vic Socialists, outside of it, unions still require sort of actual effort to work sometimes. Because again, when there's hierarchies involved, there's leadership, blah, blah, blah. But a problem with the unions that I'm seeing sort of at the moment is this push to membership before action, as opposed to the other way around. And you mentioned before, you are building grassroots power to empower the party, as opposed to trying to build the party, get the votes, and then we'll do some stuff in the community. Are you seeing that just the way our society is structured, the way people are thinking about things, has that been harder to get the sort of snowball happening of smaller scale actions leading to people joining, as opposed to just charging for membership and votes? Because again, like I mentioned before, you are engaged in politics, you need members and votes. So are you seeing success in the idea of, smaller actions leading to bigger ones? Or is there a push at a certain point where it's just we do need to just run ad campaigns to get membership up?
No, I guess, yes. We have ads. I mean, on one level, more difficult relative to what? I became a socialist in 2008. It's been an uphill battle for that whole period. A worthwhile one, but that's kind of the reality. So yeah, I mean, in terms of bringing people in. Like, yes, there's stuff online that matters, that gives people, a way to reach out to us. But the fact that Jordan Vanderlam has been doing, a tour of Victoria, everywhere he goes, everywhere we put on, a socialist solution to the housing crisis meeting, we get heaps of people show up, 20, 80, 100 people, like in Bendigo, in Ballarat, like in the regions, in suburbs where we haven't done much work, like Ringwood. People are coming out. And yes, like those are not numbers that are, capable of like storming Parliament anytime soon. But like, that steady building work, like we've put on, hundreds of people, in the last election campaign. That's really one of the main purposes of the election campaign is like, yes, you're right. We do want votes. We think that a socialist in Parliament could play a really positive role as a megaphone for the movement, but it is actually about just building, a movement of activists, and that's going really well.
I have loved that about Vic Socialists, that there is very much that sense of like, well, we're not crescendoing and ceasing. We're not fucking, Clive Palmer over here. We're not going to dismantle everything we don't get. Whether we get power or not on election day, it's about what happens after, so it should be.
Yeah, the outcome of going too far down the other way is the Labor Party. You've got the election campaign spins up and Jed Carney says a bunch of progressive stuff and then everything just goes back to normal because they leave groups barren for fucking in between election cycles and they don't give a shit about building it. Whereas for Victorian Socialists and I hope any, left party, like thinking about what this change in the Australian electoral landscape seems to be happening, it's like what you do is get people on board during an election because it's the easiest thing. I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming it's easier to get people on board. Like, do you want to volunteer for the political party during a federal election? It's like, I understand that. I understand political parties do that. And then they stay and you can go, oh, we're actually working on this stuff afterwards. We're going to be, trying to build up local community, even if we're out of power. I think that second step is where people go, what do you mean? There's nothing to do between elections. I've done my vote. And like I'm seeing with revolutionary Jed Carney, I've just got to wait around for 3 years until the next election before I can do something. So I think that's really fucking cool that Vic Socialists are explicitly taking that tact of like, we're building outside of Parliament, we're building outside of elections. We've got shit to do. Let's get together and do it.
Yeah, because like the elections, they are, just a really political time, right? Like there's all of the election coverage. So people are just more engaged. So it's a useful moment to kind of bring people in. And then, well, there's no shortage of fucked up shit happening in our world. So there's plenty of activism to throw people into. Like, it was really exciting for VS to jump in with the campaign against racism and fascism and like drive that Nazi gym out of Sunshine. That's the sort of shit that we're about. And people learn so much.
Yeah, that was a win. That really, really was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I was there at that too. It was fucking great. It was huge. It was really good. And I think the fact that there was like the Sharps and Samantha Ratnam talking at it. Yeah. Again, it's this cool, like it's looking at the political landscape and going, who here wants to join in and how? We've got Vic Socialists, you've got a party here, but also like if the Greens want to be involved, we understand that the Greens, someone like Samantha Ratnam, has a different political capital, has a different profile. Do you want to use that to help in this specific way? Cool. We're not going to fuck about with, tiny little bits of political minutia if it gets in the way of the fucking result. Can we just get some results, please? And I think people respond well to that again. Like they remember who was building it. And like you said, I do get the sense that most people can see through bullshit. So if political parties want to sort of, co-opt things or undermine things, I think a lot of people that are engaged enough can see that and be like, shut up. Fuck you.
And like if you want politicians to behave in a certain way, you do have to give them those opportunities. So like, we often it's often the socialists who reach out to Sam Ratnam and the Greens and say, come and speak at this. Like, because you can bring people, you add legitimacy to the project. Like, I've critiqued the Greens here today and I do think that's important. I think it's important 100%. that we note that they're behaving in a conservative way, that when they get into minority leadership, they often do just, pass, Labor Party bullshit. But it's also true that like they have played a useful role. Like it's mattered that there have been, Greens members of Parliament who've stood up for refugees, worn the keffiyehs in Parliament. Like we do want to see more of that from politicians. So you've got to give them the opportunity, and you've got to be prepared to work with them.
It's a good point. Yeah. I regularly sort of say that, politicians are there to be bullied. And like, if we had a Victorian Socialist Greens Party minority government together, the work then starts to start bullying you all to not forget why you're there and what you're doing. And that you need to be constantly pushed for that. I think it's also a nice sort of counterpoint to that to be like, let's also give politicians an opportunity to do the right thing.
Yeah.
We don't always have to be bullying them. It's maybe also, it's like, let's open up avenues for them to very effortlessly, again, with the power of community, to do cool shit and to, work for us and with us, as opposed to, pushing shit uphill going, can you give me a fucking modicum of respect, please, Jed Carney? Does anyone have any other specific questions?
Oh, can I ask a stupid one?
100%.
Because it's, if we were to believe the mainstream media at this point in time, and we were to believe the online commentary that's been dominated by spaces like X and all of that, vaccination against COVID is communism. Talking about Indigenous rights as Marxism. The universities are being stormed by a bunch of wokest activists who are just trying to destroy our society and all of that. Now, that doesn't really represent any view of what I understand socialism and communism to be. And granted, I did have one or two Marxist lecturers back in my day, and I'm very proud to have had that. But in an environment where people are that disempowered by the system and they're therefore regurgitating terms like Marxism or like communism in totally incorrect ways, how do you re-educate that broad base who might not have necessarily connected why it is they feel disenfranchised and disempowered as working class people, to this system, and what they might benefit from an outlook that is not neoliberalism, that is not, not right now. How do you do that?
To be honest, a lot of that benefits us. Like saying that things like vaccination, Indigenous liberation, trans rights, workers' rights, union rights, calling all of those things communism and socialism has been wonderful, because socialists are for all of those things, and so are a lot of people. So it's actually brings them into the movement. They're like, okay, they keep saying everything we hate is socialism. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe I want to find out about that. So like one of the things that I do is I work at the Red Flag bookshop, which operates out of the Victorian Socialist Volunteer Centre. And like I constantly have like young teenage women who are coming in who are like sick of the vile misogynists at their school who like go around calling everyone communist. And they're like, well, I don't know much about socialism or communism, but really hate Andrew Tate and I really hate all the people in my class.
So they start going, if these assholes are saying it's bad, then can I find out more about it? That's really
good. So yeah, I mean, like we bring people in, we have our policies, we have our conversations with people. I'm also in Socialist Alternative. We run, weekly discussion groups on Monday nights, that are exactly about the sort of like a short course in Marxism. So yeah, there's some of the things we're doing to bring people in and educate.
Yeah, cool.
That's right.
Tom, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to know how you're going. I mean, you've got a few weeks left. You've got 3 in about. I wanted to ask you at the start, but then we just got caught up in.
Well, you've run for a few elections now too.
Yeah,
yeah.
How many elections? How many federal elections deep are you? I thought it was 2. Am I wrong? Like, if you.
I think 2 federal and 2 state, maybe 3 state. Yeah.
Is it? Are you exhausted? Are you exhausted? I get you. Probably don't want to go. Yeah, I'm fucking wrecked. I'm sick of it. That's not exactly what someone says
fit
on the
and ready to
campaign
go.
trail.
Not really my
that's it.
brand.
But I mean, like, how are you going? How's the energy? How's the energy? Not just you, but people around you.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard work. Not every moment of every day is particularly glamorous. You know, we had a bit of an issue with our authorization. So we had 30 people stamping and stickering for a few hours the other night.
Oh, God.
So there's moments like that. But actually, I don't know, I find everyone coming together pretty energizing. Every time I go on a door knock, I talk to people who remind me why I'm out there doing what I'm doing. So not to pretend that there's never a moment of fatigue, but overall feeling, pretty keen. And, it's not that long to go,
It's not. It's
inside.
crunch time. It's crunch time. It's crunch time. You can relax after. You can. Well, it is other people that you get the energy from, though, isn't it, mate? You know what I mean? I mean, whether just having those conversations with people, or talking to real people in real life. That's where the energy comes from. It's through the isolation that is more and more of an aspect of the modern world. Social media's done that number on us. Our connectivity to our phones has done that to us. We feel a sense of isolation. So I'm glad to hear that other people around you help you feel connected to the election. I'd be pretty despairing otherwise of all the energy expenditure. But
So I've got one question to sort of start wrapping up now. And this is something that I asked Celeste, actually, when we had you, Celeste, on my last podcast during the last federal election.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fucking sicko, apparently, like I said. But so, Kath, when you win, what is the first thing you will be fighting towards? What is the first discrete action you want to be taking in Canberra?
I mean, the first thing, obviously, day one is only taking a worker's wage, taking the wage that's equivalent to a nurse, and putting the rest of that money into, which is not just a gimmick or because it seems cool. This is a long-held socialist belief that our representatives should live the same lives as the rest of us. They should be subject to the same, it should be no easier for me to pay my rent than anyone else who votes for me. We actually think that is a core socialist principle. So that's sort of day one, kind of immediately. Then I guess there is just so much to get to work on. Really, one of the crucial elements to dealing with the cost of living crisis, apart from all of the help and support you could give people by bringing things back into public hands and all of that, would be scrapping all anti-union laws. I think that would be a pretty key thing, because one of the things that the socialists pointed out in our budget reply is the share of GDP that workers have, which is, to say the amount of money that we create that we actually get back in the form of wages, has dropped substantially since 1974, dropped about 8%, which is equivalent to $10 an hour or $15,000 a year per worker. But why has that dropped so much? Well, what was different about the 1970s? Strong militant trade unions, often fueled by socialist and leftist movements. So I think that is a very key project.
Hell yeah. I really like those two because they're concrete and they are straight up. It's not just we want to be working on fixing the tax code to make sure. No, I'm giving my money away because it's the right thing to do, and we're scrapping all anti-union laws. Fucking you want to talk to us? We got balance of power. You want to pass a law? That's what's on offer. Fucking sick. Amazing. If you've got an email you want to send to us, it is alpdotgov@proton.me. And we get amazing questions. We've recently put the call out for controversial leftist opinions. We've got a few of them in, which is really nice. But some of these emails that we get in, just to me, reinforce why any of us do anything. And it's movement building. And this email came in before we haven't announced that you'll be on, Kath. So this came in just apropos of nothing, right? We got this email in from Sam, and it's fucking amazing. It says, "Hi all. Mitch, you summarized taking action perfectly in last week's episode. Getting active and involved turns your despair into energy and determination. I'm a single parent and school teacher who has felt the rental crisis acutely, compounded by the absurd cost of childcare. After attending a Pingers in the Pub event back in February, I am now a dedicated Vic Soc member and volunteer helping with Kath Larkin's Cooper campaign. I was absolutely terrified the first time I did door knocking, but after talking to lots of cool people on the doorsteps, I have more confidence articulating my beliefs and talking about politics in universal ways that people can relate to. In light of what Celeste said about the ripple effect, several of my family and friends are now hosting Pingers yard signs. They have had many conversations with their neighbors and friends who all seem sympathetic to our cause, or so my mum tells me. My 4-year-old daughter also refers to Jordan as the really kind man who wants to help people who don't have a home. To anyone listening who is anxious about taking the first step, I implore you to take it. I guarantee it won't be your last. You will meet heaps of great people and your help is needed in whatever way you can offer it. Love the show and keep up the good work, Sam.
What a
Fuck,
legend.
Thanks, Sam.
man.
Thank you, Sam.
Well, I've met Sam and I've also met Tilly, the 4-year-old, and I can confirm that she does make those arguments. This is
Cute.
not a parent who's making stuff up. I mean, this is what Victorian Socialists is about. This is the movement that we're creating. This is, what we're trying to do to build a broad current. And if you're thinking about getting involved, definitely reach out. You can reach out to me personally on my socials, or email Victorian Socialists. You can check out our website. Get involved. It's way less scary than you think, and there's sort of something to do for everyone. Whether it's door knocking, putting leaflets in letterboxes, hosting a yard sign, coming along to meetings, going around putting up signs for people who've agreed to have them. There's just heaps of stuff. Come meet us, have a yarn, have a great time, and let's build socialism.
What's your next panel, Kath? What's your next panel?
I was speaking at the DCAN Forum on Tuesday the 15th, so that's the Darebin Climate Action Network. So if you want to hear a bit from me and from the other candidates in the area, you can come along to that. And then on the 23rd, me and Jordan are hosting an evening in the pub, a sort of Meet the Socialists candidate Q&A. Be a great place to come and,
Sweet.
Fuck yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, Kath.
All
Really
right,
appreciate
thanks, guys. See you, comrades.